Hi everyone. So I want to walk you through the sample outline that I posted. This should kind of help hopefully guide you as you create your own, help you think about the organization, and I have a few kind of helpful pointers on citation, which I know can be a little tricky when you're new to it. So, first thing you'll notice is in terms of the formatting of the outline, I kept it pretty simple. You can use whatever kind of format works best for you. For me, I went bullet points is great. So, in my introduction, my assumption is that it'll probably be about half a page. And in it, I want to be sure that I explain kind of the context and the scope of my research paper. So, what I'm writing about is the Shakespeare play Macbeth, and that it's considered to be cursed, but it's also super popular. And I was curious about why that might be. You'll notice I make a claim here that it's really popular, in fact, one of the most popular Shakespeare plays. If you make a claim, you need to back that up with evidence. In this case, I got that information from an article called Performance History on page 55. So even though I'm not using any specific language from Agnes's article, because I'm using that information, I still need to be sure to give him credit. So my main focus here is that the play is usually thought of as being about violence and ambition, but I kind of am more interested in guilt and how it works. So I want to look at some examples of where guilt really comes into play in some productions. So I'm going to examine 3 adaptations of Macbeth that I think really highlight that it's really about guilt. So here you've seen that I've listed my 3 big pieces of evidence. This is called your roadmap or signposting. So in my first paragraph, I'm explaining explicitly this is what I'm going to tell you to kind of explain my topic to you. So it's very clear, it'll probably look like a list. So I'm looking at 3 things, a play called Lady Macbeth, something called the Macbeth Project, and then a movie called Mickey B. So you'll notice that this is the order I put them in my introduction, so it's also the order that my body paragraphs are going to follow. You want to be sure that your signpost or roadmap matches your actual paper. So let's look at our first body paragraph. My guess is this will probably be about a page. So this paragraph is going to describe this 1998 production of Lady Macbeth and connect it to that idea of guilt. Right? When I talk about zooming in, the kind of idea of Macbeth, the play, super big. There's so much there. So the way that I'm zooming in my scope is that I'm thinking specifically about this aspect of guilt. So I have some kind of background information. This play was written by a woman and put on in Seoul, South Korea. And here I pulled a quotation that really jumped out to me when I was doing my research. So you'll notice in my citation, I just have her last name, Tae-suk. There's no page number. That is because this is a website. You'll notice .org, which helped me know that it was legitimate. So since there isn't kind of any pages on a website, I just use her last name instead. So I've gone ahead and pulled some quotations that I think will be helpful. Right? The whole play is focused on an obsession with guilt. It was super experimental. And the other piece of evidence I'm using here is this article by a scholar whose last name is Im, and they wrote about it from the perspective of an audience member and were helpful because they gave me some dialogue from the play itself. So here I have taken language directly word for word from Im's article, so you'll notice it's in quotation marks, and because this came from a more traditional article, there is a page number. So if we take a look down here, right, this was an article published in New Theatre Quarterly, so even though I looked at it online, there is a physical copy of this somewhere, and it runs pages 19 to 30. And then, in my last kind of little bit, I want to connect the lasting popularity of this play to its focus on guilt. So you'll note this is a direct connection back to my main focus. This kind of weaving of everything together should remind you of your profile paper. My next body paragraph is about something called the Macbeth Project, and again I anticipated probably about a page. So that is part of the Shakespeare Festival in South Africa. And the purpose of the festival, and again here I have a direct quotation that I've pulled out, and you'll notice that I have 2 last names posted here. That is because that source, that article, actually has two authors. So I need to be sure that I credit both of them. You just put them in alphabetical order. So in this case, M before V, so I have Meskin and van der Waals. So I do need to be sure that they're both included in the citation, along with the page number that this quotation was found on. So here I had kind of an interesting element, which is rather than think about the play as a literary text, the organizers wanted it to be a performance-based experience. So I'm using my own words here, but this isn't my own information. So I do still need to cite it to say, oh, if you want to see where I kind of got this information from, turn to page 80. The other thing that you'll notice is since I have just cited those two authors, I don't need to repeat their name. Instead, I can just have the page number, which signals to the reader I'm still using the same source here. And again, connecting it back to that big idea of guilt, the students were asked to stage the play according to one of the three major themes, one of which was guilt. So my last body paragraph, I again anticipated to be about a page. I think for a 4-page paper, you can kind of assume you'll have half-page introduction, half-page conclusion. The remaining 3 pages will be those body paragraphs. So this paragraph is about a 2006 movie adaptation called Mickey B that was created by inmates of a maximum security prison in Northern Ireland. So this whole production, everything from writing the play to the costumes to the actors, were all done by inmates. So what you'll note here is, again, this is my own language, but because this information came from somewhere else, and I'm paraphrasing or summarizing, I still need to give credit, in this case to Roman Ray, where I got this information. Okay, and again, just kind of pulling out things that are going to be helpful for me. So now when I actually start writing, I'm not rifling through all my sources trying to find little quotations. I've already pulled what I think I'm going to use. So this is going to make the actual writing process much easier. So here in the article, we have quotations from these two gentlemen, Sam McLean and Jason Thompson. So even though they are the ones who said the specific words that I'm quoting, because I still found this in Ray's article, that's what I'm going to cite. Because otherwise we can imagine kind of how confusing that would get. So we're thinking about the big container that might have a bunch of other quotations in it, but we cite the big container where we found it. And again, I'm threading everything back to that main kind of focus where I zoomed in, which is that idea of guilt. So my conclusion I anticipate will be about half a page, and a conclusion can go in 2 different directions. So it can summarize everything that's come before and kind of tie everything up, or it can suggest what research or work, we call it a call to action, should happen next. For this paper, I think the best option would just be summarizing and tying everything together under that larger theme of guilt. So I'm always coming back to that main idea. If I was writing a paper about single-use plastic, however, it might be better to say, okay, now that you've learned all this about plastic, here are some ways you could avoid using plastic, like purchasing metal or bamboo straws. You kind of get the idea. So here's what I have. While these 3 productions created very different final products, Lady Macbeth, The Macbeth Project, and Mickey B all dissect the role of guilt in the play. So you'll notice I'm using those signposts or that roadmap again here, right? I'm coming right back to it. And then I'm also returning to the claim that I made in my introduction, again, tying everything back together. Then I have a 1-sentence, just kind of rehash of each of those body paragraphs. Your conclusion is your last chance to talk to your reader and make sure they completely understood. So even though this might feel repetitive or how did you not get it the first time, it's especially as we start writing longer and longer papers, you just want to kind of focus on that clarity and come back to be sure that they understood. And then for my final sentence, I have Macbeth can be simplified to a violent tale of endless ambition, or, as these 3 productions suggest, Macbeth can be treated as a study of guilt and offer solutions that break the cycle of violence. I've also just included my works cited page here, just so you can take a peek. So what I will point out that's kind of a little strange is the only line that goes all of the way is the top line. After that, you're going to hit an indent before each other line. This is so when we look at everything together, it's not one giant block of text where it's really hard to figure out what goes with what. Instead, things are kind of neatly organized. Then everything is simply put in alphabetical order via the last name of the author. So if you have any questions or need help with your outline, please let me know. I'm more than happy to brainstorm with you or even do some of the outline together with you. So don't hesitate to talk to me on my office hours on Zoom, send me an email, or you can send me a text. Hope all is well, and I'm looking forward to reading your outlines.